Hello, and welcome to Life Diaries, a space where the pages of life open up, one story at a time. These are tales written by experience, spoken from the heart. Take a moment for yourself, and let's begin. Mark stepped out of the entrance, and the November chill bit him to the bone. Pitch darkness reigned around, although the clock showed only 8 in the evening. An icy wind moaned in the treetops, and cold autumn rain poured monotonously from the low sky. Faster, faster he needed to cross the damp courtyard. His faithful Swallow awaited him at the 12th entrance, an old but reliable Daewoo Nexia, their family breadwinner. How uncomfortable it was at such a time. About such weather, they said that you wouldn't even kick out the most loyal dog. Well, for Mark, this turned into an advantage. More orders, more chances to earn money tonight. By day, he worked as an economist at a bank. By the standards of their provincial town, the pay was decent. And yet, almost every day, the man had to go out for a second shift, get behind the wheel of a taxi, because there was a catastrophic lack of money. The funds weren't needed for a new car, a spacious apartment, or a foreign vacation, although that wouldn't have been superfluous either. The money went towards Leo's treatment and rehabilitation. Leo, their eldest son, was both a pain and the greatest happiness for Mark. How he and his wife rejoiced when their firstborn came into the world. Mark still remembered Sarah's beaming eyes at the maternity ward's discharge room. With what pride she handed her anxious husband a bundle of swaddling clothes and a tiny bundle. Mark carefully lifted the corner of the blanket and saw his son's face for the first time. The little one was sleeping, eyes tightly shut and brows furrowed crossly. It was as if a wave of tenderness washed over Mark. He couldn't believe his happiness. Could this tiny one, this little human being, really be his child? At first, Leo grew up completely healthy, developing exactly according to the books. He started tracking moving objects on time, turned over, sat up on schedule, and even walked earlier than expected. He wasn't even a year old yet. Mark and Sarah rejoiced at every success of their son, proud of their bright boy. Mark was an unusually involved father. Returning from work, he immediately hurried to his son, played with him, bathed him, fed him dinner, giving his wife a chance to rest. He didn't do it out of obligation. He genuinely enjoyed spending time with the boy. Especially since Leo was simply an ideal child. He grasped everything quickly, didn't throw baseless tantrums. To him, still just a little one, anything could be explained with words, almost like an adult. Of course, Sarah and Mark often indulged in dreams about their son's future. "He's so smart," the happy mother smiled, watching the little one build a tall tower out of building blocks. "This toy is for children aged 3 and up, and Leo is just over a year old, and he's already figured out what's what. He'll probably grow up to be a talented engineer or architect." Mark agreed. It also seemed to him that Leo was developed beyond his years. In this, he saw his wife's merit, who tirelessly engaged in developmental games with their son, read him fairy tales, and introduced the little one to the world around him. "I wish he'd start school soon," Sarah dreamed. "They'll probably praise me at parent-teacher meetings." "And me," Mark smiled. "I'll go sometimes too, taking turns. Otherwise, it's not fair. All the glory to you alone." When Leo turned 1, the couple learned about a new pregnancy. This was a complete surprise. They hadn't planned on making Leo an older brother so quickly. Their son was still a very young child, requiring a lot of attention and care. And then a new child was on the way. At first, the couple were a little scared, but then they calmed down and even became happy. "It's for the best," Sarah assured. "The age difference between the children will be small. They'll have common interests and all that. They'll have fun together." Yes, that's certainly a plus, Mark agreed. But how will you handle it? I'm at work until late evening, and you'll have no one to help you. Alone with two little ones like that. I'm not the first, and I won't be the last, Sarah bravely said, stroking her still barely noticeable belly. Others manage, so we will too. The pregnancy went well. True, during the first weeks, Sarah suffered from severe morning sickness, which hadn't happened when she was expecting Leo. A girl, probably, the pale woman smiled. It would be great to have a complete set. Well, a boy is fine too. It's more interesting and fun for boys to grow up together. Mark didn't care who was born, a boy or a girl. Other things worried him, the health of his wife and the future baby. Sarah was very tired. Leo had grown a little and turned into an incredibly active child. He needed constant supervision. At the routine ultrasound, it turned out that Sarah was indeed expecting a girl. And not just one. The scan technician confidently stated that the couple needed to prepare for twins. It was probably a shock. Mark almost grabbed his head, only restraining himself for Sarah's sake. She lay on the couch so happy, smiling at the monitor. The doctor showed her daughters actively kicking their little arms and legs. "Remember how we dreamed of a big family?" Sarah asked on the way home. Of course, Mark remembered. He met his future wife at university, at one of the festive events. Back then, they organized a concert for the students, followed by a disco in the large assembly hall. It was there that Mark noticed the pretty, shy Sarah. Her friends were having a blast on the dance floor, while she stood by a column, smiling as she watched all the vibrant activity. Mark first admired her from afar. This gentle, modest girl captivated him somehow. Maybe it was precisely her naturalness, meekness, calmness. And also, she had an amazingly kind, warm smile. When Mark first saw how it lit up the sweet face of the girl who was still a stranger then, he immediately knew he was in love. Just like that, at first sight. Of course, Mark approached the beautiful stranger, learned her name, and started a conversation. Now the man couldn't even remember what they talked about. It seemed like trivial questions. Where do you study? What do you do? And so on. And then fate itself gave the interested guy a chance. A smooth, calm melody played. A slow dance. Of course, Mark invited Sarah. On perfectly legitimate grounds, he got the chance to put his arm around her waist, to touch her. It seemed that during this dance he realized that he would never, ever let go of this charming creature. He wanted to protect Sarah, to make her happy, to cheer her up, so he could feel her gratitude and see that smile. So beautiful, gentle, kind. They started dating. With each passing day, Mark became convinced that Sarah was his other half. They understood each other with half a word, saw many things the same way, and even chose the same movies. In short, no one was surprised when a few years later, right after finishing university, Mark and Sarah got married. Both came from average families, not impoverished, but not wealthy either. An apartment didn't fall from the sky for them, but the couple, who had already found their first jobs, were able to get a mortgage. Their family nest became a small 2-room apartment in a cozy residential area. Mark then thought it was just the beginning, planning to climb the career ladder, maybe even become a department head. And why not? He was a hard worker and was no afraid of responsibility. And then they could move to a bigger apartment. But now this 2-room apartment was quite suitable. Sarah acted as the interior designer then. With what enthusiasm she chose wallpaper, tiles, chandeliers, curtains. Of course, she had to work within a very limited budget, but Sarah did brilliantly. After the renovation, the apartment was completely transformed. Now it resembled a stylish dwelling from some glossy magazine. "How did you manage that?" Mark was amazed then. He hadn't expected such a result at all. Natural talent, Sarah smirked. It was true. Then Leo appeared. And now, the news of the twin pregnancy. Mark first thought about the fact that he couldn't cope. After all, their family was just shy of being a large family. And Mark? He still wasn't a department head. His salary was higher now, of course, and the position was more respectable than at the very beginning of his career path. But dreaming of a new apartment or a new car was out of the question. Mark then seriously began thinking about options for starting his own business. He couldn't even imagine yet that they would soon truly need money. A lot of money. And not at all for improving their living conditions. Much more urgent needs would arise. When Sarah was already in her final months of pregnancy, Leo suddenly fell ill. The little one developed a high fever and a severe cough. This happened for the first time in the little one's year and a half of life. Before that, he hadn't even had a runny nose. Of course, the young parents were very worried. Mark even took sick leave from work to be with his wife and son, because Sarah's belly had reached some incredible size, and it was even difficult for her to move around the house. And Leo? He wanted to be held so badly. The little one was very sick. Mark rocked him for days in his strong arms. Then the illness receded, the fever went down, the cough disappeared. Sarah and Mark breathed a sigh of relief. But Leo changed a lot after the illness. He became completely different. The young parents didn't recognize him. The formerly cheerful, curious little one suddenly turned into an apathetic, indifferent child. If before he would curiously climb wherever he could and couldn't, which of course caused his parents a lot of trouble, now he would just sit in a corner and methodically arrange things he found nearby in a line. Toys, dishes, shoes, books. Silently, monotonously, staring somewhere into space. It seemed Leo had stopped understanding speech directed at him. The little one, of course, hadn't spoken before the illness either, just babbled something in his baby language. But he understood everything, absolutely everything. He would bring toys when asked by his parents, choose food and clothes, participate in games. Now, however, their son seemed to have walled himself off from the whole world and withdrawn into his own world. And when the bewildered parents tried to pull him out, Leo would throw tantrums with screaming, crying, and rolling on the floor. At these moments, it was impossible to stop him. The nightmare only ended when the little one ran out of energy. He would fall asleep right on the floor or lie silently, staring into the void in front of him. It was terrifying. The uncertainty was frightening. Of course, the worried parents took the child to doctors. They just shrugged, asked them to be patient, prescribed vitamins, explained the condition as consequences of a severe illness, assuring them that the body would recover and everything would be as before. Mark and Sarah hoped, they wanted to believe the doctor's prognoses, but both already suspected they were facing a problem. A serious problem. True, they tried not to share their fears aloud. And then the girls were born, Annie and Laura. As is often the case with twins, the little ones arrived a little early. They were very small and weak. The first month of their lives, the girls spent in the hospital. They were in special incubators, cared for with some special formulas. Mark saw his daughters in the hospital. Annie and Laura lay there, entangled in tubes, tiny, thin. They were very different from their older brother, who had always been large, rosy-cheeked, bursting with health. The man's heart ached at the sight of the girls, weak, almost transparent, touching. Would they make it? They made it. Annie and Laura were discharged from the hospital with good weight and excellent prognoses. Life with newborn twins and a 1.5-year-old son with unexplained problems, it was something else. Sarah and Mark temporarily forgot what sleep was. They slept in snatches, taking turns. Mark still didn't understand how they endured all that then. The girls grew, developed at the right pace, delighted their parents with their intelligence, gave them smiles, bright emotions. But Leo, he kept withdrawing further into his incomprehensible world. The boy barely reacted to what was happening around him. Despite being busy, the parents managed to visit doctors with Leo. At first, they found no abnormalities. "Well, what do you expect?" the pediatrician said, spreading her hands. First a serious illness, then 2 younger sisters appeared right after. "Of course your boy is in shock. Give him time to recover. He'll be fine." But time passed, and things only got worse. Tantrums out of nowhere, restless sleep, repetitive, monotonous actions. But what was most frightening was Leo's detachment. He no longer smiled at his mom and dad, didn't seek their attention. The boy paid no attention to his little sisters at all, as if they didn't exist. Leo's peers were already starting to talk, and in the yard they tried to play with each other. Sometimes this led to quarrels and misunderstandings, but the children interacted. They were interested in being together. They gravitated towards each other. Leo, on the other hand, at that very time, Leo would sit somewhere in the corner of the sandbox and methodically pour sand from one bucket to another. For hours. Sarah and Mark would have preferred, like other parents, to run around the yard with their son and make sure he didn't fall from somewhere or climb where he shouldn't. But that wasn't the case. Leo didn't go to kindergarten at the appointed time. Sarah didn't send him. "He's not ready for kindergarten." She shook her head. "Maybe, on the contrary, kindergarten would be good for him." Mark doubted. "He'll start interacting with other children, learn something." Sarah just shook her head sadly. She knew her son better than anyone else. Her eyes, they were so sad at that moment. Mark was ready to do anything in the world, just not to see that bitterness, that fear in his beloved's eyes. The worried father managed to get an appointment with a professor, an experienced specialist who was difficult to get in to see. It was he who delivered the terrible diagnosis that cut short all hopes and dreams connected with Leo. Autism, and of a very severe degree. Yes, at first the development of such children proceeds at a normal pace, and then there's a regression. It always happens. Sometimes a vaccination serves as the trigger, sometimes, as in Leo's case, an illness. Sometimes it just happens on its own. You will have to accept this fact. The professor looked sternly at the frightened parents, speaking sharply. "Life isn't over. It will just be a completely different life. The boy needs treatment, rehabilitation. The result? It's complicated. Some such patients compensate quite successfully. Others. But anything can happen. In any case, your son now requires lifelong treatment. Treatment and your support." For the young couple, their whole world collapsed then. They remembered their plans and dreams connected with Leo, and couldn't hold back the tears. Even Mark cried, though secretly from Sarah. Of course, in front of her, he was brave, trying to appear unperturbed and fearless. The diagnosis wasn't easy to accept, but at least it became clear which direction to move in. Endless trips to hospitals, development centers, rehabilitation clinics began. Leo was enrolled in a special needs kindergarten, where specialists worked intensively with him. True, they had to drive him every day to the other end of the city, but the couple seemed to start noticing results. By the age of 5, Leo finally started talking. It wasn't conscious dialogue, but repeatedly uttered phrases from cartoons and commercials. But the parents were happy even with this. Annie and Laura were also growing. They were simply wonderful girls, not geniuses or prodigies, but ordinary happy children, cheerful, artistic, loving their parents. The daughters were friends with the neighborhood kids, adored animals, played with dolls. It was important to them what they wore and how they looked. The girls often hugged their mom and dad, gave them smiles, were happy to go for walks with them. And these generally ordinary things were perceived by Sarah and Mark as the highest happiness. Of course, Sarah didn't return to work after maternity leave. Leo needed a lot of time. The woman worked with him at home herself and constantly took him to hospitals and clinics. And the girls needed attention too. So, for now, there was no talk of Sarah working. Mark became the sole breadwinner for the family. The bank paid well, but a lot of money was needed for treatment and rehabilitation. A lot. Sometimes the family was financially supported by relatives and foundations that Sarah contacted. But most of the expenses, of course, lay on their own shoulders. The world. So Mark scrambled as best he could. Sometimes he helped with paid repairs. Sometimes, like this evening, he drove a taxi. Mark finally reached the car and slipped into the warm interior. Tiredness. Now he felt only heavy tiredness and despair. The man understood that even if he drove a taxi all night, he still wouldn't earn the required amount. Sarah had learned about some new method at a local private center. An enthusiastic doctor was organizing a rehabilitation course for children like Leo. He promised impressive results. But this pleasure wasn't cheap. There was very little time left to gather the necessary amount. Sarah had recently often hinted to Mark that he wasn't coping with his main duty, couldn't provide for the family properly. Not directly accusing him, no. But she would sigh, state the necessary amounts for treatment, look with silent reproach. It was unbearable. Mark felt like a complete failure at such moments. Yes, he really couldn't provide for his own wife and 3 children. They had been living in the same 2-room apartment for almost 10 years, had never flown to the sea, and drove an old Daewoo Nexia that Mark had inherited from his father. It had already started to rust. But the most important thing was that Mark couldn't pay for the treatment his son so desperately needed. Leo's return to a normal life, that cost a lot. And Mark didn't know how to earn that kind of money. That was a fact. It's hard to constantly feel the guilt for your own child's condition on your shoulders. It's simply impossible to get used to this feeling. And on top of that, the man couldn't give enough attention to his daughters either. He was always either at work or doing odd jobs. Annie and Laura adored him, clinging to their dad's neck as soon as he crossed the threshold. It was so touching, so sweet, that Mark's heart ached with tenderness for these little ones. It was just a shame they didn't spend time together often. Sarah was very tired. Over the years since Leo's illness began, she had turned into a thin, embittered woman with a hard look. Sarah picked on her husband about everything, often venting her fear and irritation on him, demanding, scolding, sometimes even insulting him. Mark understood why his wife behaved that way and didn't judge her. On the contrary, he felt very sorry for Sarah. After all, he remembered her as she was then, the meek, gentle, kind girl he first saw in the assembly hall. She was like that sometimes, that former Sarah would come out, and then Mark felt almost happy. True, lately this happened less and less often. Mark sighed, started the engine. The headlights cut through the darkness of the courtyard. The man pressed the accelerator pedal to the floor and went off to look for passengers. There should be plenty on such a foul evening. Who wanted to get soaked in the rain waiting for a bus? Mark even quite liked driving a taxi. Sometimes he got interesting clients. Many of them confided their deepest secrets to the driver. Over the years of working, Mark had heard many incredible stories. Perhaps someday later, when he had free time, he would even write a book. The evening went on as usual. Mark drove several people who had stayed late at work home, delivered a package, took a clearly upset man to the train station. Several hours flew by unnoticed. Night fell. Black. Uncomfortable. Pitch dark. As luck would have it, there were no more orders. Mark didn't like such forced downtime. He lost time and didn't earn money. It was frustrating. The man decided to drive around the city himself. Maybe he'd find clients. This often happened. But the streets were emptier than ever. It was shaping up to be a bad shift. And this at the very time when money was so desperately needed for urgent rehabilitation. Sarah would sigh heavily again over the earnings Mark brought her. And even worse, if she started to cry. Mark couldn't stand his wife's tears. Seeing Sarah cry frightened him. Truly frightened him. Mark drove out of town, onto the bypass road. It was faster to get to the center that way. He needed to look there. Surely someone would need a taxi in this weather. And the center was, after all, the busiest place in the city. There were few cars on the road. The rain was pouring down now. Mark had to turn the wipers to their highest speed. The man glanced at his phone screen. Almost 2 a.m. A little more, and it was time to go back. He had to get up at 7 a.m. He needed at least a little sleep. Otherwise, he'd mix up the numbers in the report again, and goodness knows, they might take away his bonus as punishment. He couldn't let that happen. Absolutely not. Suddenly, the headlights caught a human figure hurrying along the roadside. Mark slowed down, looked closer. Strange. Who would think of walking along the side of the highway in this weather, and at night too? An inner voice, wise and practical, advised Mark to drive past, because, well, it was clear it was some shady story. And Mark had enough problems of his own. He needed to earn money. He needed to look for orders, not get involved in questionable adventures. Home, Sarah. She was waiting for money. Mark had many obligations to his family. What could be simpler than just driving past and forgetting about the person hurrying somewhere along the slippery, muddy roadside? But the man already knew he had stopped. This person clearly needed help. There were almost no cars on the highway at this time. Maybe he was the stranger's last chance for salvation? Mark, sighing, made the only right decision. Pulling up alongside the person, the man braked. Mark was very surprised to realize that a girl was standing on the roadside. Very young, almost a child. She probably wasn't even 20. The stranger was wearing a wide coat, clearly too big for her, and it was a man's coat. She was soaked through and likely freezing. But what was this? The coat was pulled tightly over the girl's protruding belly. She was clearly pregnant, and judging by everything, she was far along. The scene was becoming increasingly strange. The stranger looked at Mark with eyes full of hope and despair. Her whole face was wet, either from the rain or from tears. Most likely, from both at once. The man silently opened the passenger door. The girl slid into the car. A muddy puddle immediately formed on the floor from her. "Please, let's go," the passenger pleaded. "Hurry, or he'll catch me." Who? Alex? Mark wondered for a moment again. Was this poor soul also being pursued by someone? Maybe Mark was putting himself in great danger by agreeing to give her a ride, getting involved in problems. But what choice did he have? Kick the girl out? Leave her in the pouring rain on the roadside? No, the man couldn't do that. So, if she said they needed to go faster, they needed to go faster. Mark pressed the gas pedal to the floor, and the car obediently sped forward. The man wasn't thinking about where to go, not yet. He just sped along the almost empty highway. The girl kept looking back. Once in the warmth and relative safety, she relaxed slightly, giving way to her feelings. Large tears streamed down her cheeks, sobs tore from her chest. But the passenger suppressed them with all her might, not letting the hysteria completely take over. Mark looked at the girl with pity. So young and pregnant. What had happened to her? How could he help her? "Where to?" Mark finally asked. 10 minutes had passed. They had covered a decent distance. "To the police?" "No!" The girl shook her head fiercely. "Not there." Mark's doubts intensified. Why was she so scared of the police? Maybe she had done something. Was this strange stranger being pursued? Was she afraid to go to the police station? It seemed suspicious. And what had he gotten himself into? As if he didn't have enough problems of his own. The girl seemed to read his thoughts. "Don't think I'm a criminal or anything like that. He just has connections there, you see? And when I ran away, when he realized it, he must have reported me. Said I took something or did something else. Anyway, if you take me to the police, they'll either detain me or, even worse, hand me over to him. Do you understand?" "I don't understand anything," Mark sighed. "Of course you don't understand." The girl nodded. "You don't know anything. I know that people shouldn't be on the highway in this weather, cold and rain, especially very young girls, and in this condition." The strange passenger, as if remembering she was pregnant, gently stroked her belly. "I ran away because of him, you see. Or rather, because of her. I'm having a girl. When I think that she could also fall into his hands, into the hands of that terrible man." "What terrible man are you talking about all the time?" Mark finally decided to find out the truth. After all, he needed to decide where to take this young creature, and it was time to go home. He had to get up early tomorrow. "It's my husband. Well, almost. We never got married, we were just planning to. Now I'm very glad we didn't." "And why is he pursuing you? Why did you run away from him? What happened?" At that moment, the girl, looking back, noticed the headlights of a car catching up with them and immediately stiffened, tensing up. Then she slid down completely so she wouldn't be visible from the window. The car sped past. The girl exhaled and returned to her seat. Amazing agility and speed for a future mother whose pregnancy was clearly nearing its end. "Not him," the girl smiled. "Lucky." "So where should I take you?" The man asked the main question. "I need to think," the girl said, and then unexpectedly introduced herself. "By the way, my name is Chloe." "Mark," the man automatically replied. "Nice to meet you." The girl smiled. Mark smirked. Under such strange and anxious circumstances, their conversation suddenly took on the tone of a casual chat. "I'll tell you what happened to me, but please don't stop. Just keep driving around the city. I'll pay for the gas and time. Or rather, my father will pay. Please believe me." Mark shrugged. If she wanted him to drive, he'd drive. It wasn't difficult for him. "I'm just afraid he might have tracked us down after all. If you stop, then, well, you never know." "Okay," the man nodded. "I'm listening very carefully. Tell me everything. Just be honest. And then, maybe, we'll figure out how to help you." "Okay." Chloe took a deep breath and began her long story. Chloe was born in Zelenogorsk, the central city of their region. Her father was a successful businessman, and her mother didn't work, as her husband fully provided for the family. Chloe lived in a large house with a swimming pool and a beautiful garden. From a young age, the girl was never denied anything. And why would she be? The only child of wealthy parents. Expensive toys, trips to the most beautiful resorts in the world, lessons with the best coaches in the city, designer clothes, an elite private school. Chloe always had the best of everything. Her father simply adored his only daughter. Moreover, she was also the only grandchild for 2 sets of grandparents. Needless to say, Chloe was bathed in the love and attention of her family from birth. Until she was 10 to 12 years old, the girl thought everyone lived like that. And then she looked around and realized a completely different life was happening in parallel. It was more complicated, more dangerous, but perhaps for that reason, more interesting. In the final year of her elite school, the girl was clearly bored. It seemed to her that everything interesting and exciting was passing her by. She hadn't even been anywhere alone. After school, Chloe was picked up by a bodyguard, who also took her to sections, clubs, and even accompanied the boss's daughter when she went to the shopping mall. No real danger threatened the girl. Her father conducted his business honestly. He received no threats. The man had no enemies. The bodyguard, he was there, but simply so that, for example, some guy wouldn't bother Chloe on the street, or so she wouldn't be hit by a car. More like a nanny or an escort. In short, her parents felt more at ease when a specially trained person was with their daughter. Most of Chloe's classmates were in exactly the same situation. Graduating students were still accompanied by bodyguards, nannies, tutors, and so on. Classmates, they also seemed somehow boring, uninteresting to Chloe. The same hothouse plants as herself, grown under a bell jar. The guys and girls never even gathered alone, without adults, to do something crazy and fun. Her father, when he met with old friends, sometimes recalled his childhood. Chloe listened to these conversations, not missing a word. Now that was life. Freedom, adventures, dangers. And what about her? Chloe knew that after finishing school, she would go to study in Moscow. A place was already prepared for her at Moscow State University, in the prestigious Faculty of Finance and Economics. Her dad had taken care of it in advance. It was planned that Chloe wouldn't live in a dormitory. A large, stylish, comfortable apartment near the university buildings had been rented for her beforehand. And of course, a housekeeper and a bodyguard would always be with the Golden Girl. Everything as usual. A fun student life was not in the cards for Chloe. Her father didn't intend to loosen his control over his only beloved daughter, even from a distance. True, of course, as Chloe got older, she got more rights. But it was still negligibly little. Her parents continued to consider their almost adult daughter a small, naive girl who was surrounded by dangers everywhere. Chloe tried to talk to her parents, to explain that she needed more freedom, but always met with complete lack of understanding. "But you are free," her mother shrugged. "You choose what to do yourself. You quit your extra math lessons. You chose the hippodrome." No one said a word. If you want to go to Italy for vacation, you go. If you want to go to Thailand, you fly. What other freedom could there be? "What you're asking for isn't freedom," her father echoed his wife. "It's called something else, neglect and abandonment. Do you know how many such unwanted children I saw in my childhood, who wandered the streets all day? Not just saw, I was one of them myself. I was very lucky, I made it. But many didn't. Do you know how many broken lives I've seen? You have a happy life, a carefree childhood. Don't invent nonsense." Chloe realized she couldn't get through to her parents. The girl tried protesting for a while, but only achieved being taken to an expensive psychologist. These sessions were unpleasant for Chloe because they spoke to her in a deliberately soft and polite tone. And this woman in a strict blouse behaved as if she were sitting in front of a mentally ill madam, not a young girl dreaming of freedom. Chloe finished school. This was her last summer before moving to Moscow. The capital awaited her. Something new. The girl hoped she would manage to get more freedom, despite her father's observers constantly being nearby. He had not only hired a housekeeper, almost a nanny, and a bodyguard driver for her, but had also alerted all relatives and friends living in the capital. They were also supposed to keep an eye on little Chloe. It was a sunny June day. Chloe was wandering through the shopping mall in the gloomiest of moods. She needed to buy a swimsuit for her upcoming trip to a European resort. Or rather, she had many swimsuits. She just needed some excuse to leave the house. The calmness, the boredom had become unbearable. Her classmates had gone their separate ways. There was no one to even invite over. So Chloe invented entertainment for herself. A gray, dreary, monotonous life. Comfortable, of course, but how boring. Chloe lacked adventure, bright emotions, something new and exciting. At least the bodyguard stayed in the car in the parking lot. Chloe begged him not to go with her. He first called his boss, Chloe's father, and only then briefly nodded his head, letting the girl go on her own journey through the shopping mall. Well, at least that, and thank goodness for it. Chloe decided to go to the food court. She was hungry, and she just wanted some unhealthy food. At home, the same cook prepared only healthy dishes. Tasty, nutritious, but already tiresome. So Chloe ordered herself a couple of hamburgers and a soda. As the girl made her way to her table, she tripped over something. Later, she realized it was a toy car forgotten by some child. A small camouflage-colored truck. Fate, probably. Chloe lost her balance. Falling, she, of course, dropped the tray. As if in slow motion, the girl watched as the brown liquid spilled from the glass and, by Murphy's Law, flew straight at her. A second later, the girl was hit by several unpleasant sensations at once. Pain from hitting the floor and cold from her soda. For a moment, Chloe just sat on the floor, assessing the size of the disaster. She was soaked almost through. Her light sundress from the new collection was hopelessly ruined. The hamburgers. There they were, in pieces, lying around. By the way, the sauce from one of them was smeared on the hem of the same ill-fated sundress. How could she go to the parking lot looking like this? Everyone would stare at her. Tears welled up in her eyes. They were probably tears of anger and frustration. And then Chloe felt strong, reliable hands catch her from behind. Someone helped her up. The girl turned around and met the eyes of her rescuer. It turned out to be a young guy. Not just a guy, a real hunk. Not like her scrawny, pimply classmates. Tall, strong, masculine. Sculpted muscles were visible under his tight, dark t-shirt. An athlete, maybe? An open, simple face, regular features, a white-toothed smile, hair the pleasant shade of ripe wheat. And his eyes. Incredible, piercing blue eyes on a handsome tanned face. "Are you hurt?" the guy asked, looking Chloe up and down. The girl was a little embarrassed, which hadn't happened to her in a long time, maybe ever. "No, just..." Chloe spread her hands in confusion, showing her rescuer what her sundress had turned into. The wet clothes clung tightly to her figure, which the guy eyed with considerable interest. Admiration was clearly visible in his eyes. Chloe had never felt such pleasant sensations before. A chill in her stomach, goosebumps on her back, slight dizziness. "Yes, your dress will clearly have to be thrown away. It's a shame. It really suits you." "To hell with it," Chloe smiled. "But how am I supposed to get to the car looking like this?" "Very simple." The guy smiled, pulled his t-shirt over his head, and handed it to the girl. "Here, put this on. Nothing will be noticeable." "And what about you?" Chloe asked, surprised, admiring the stranger's tanned, muscular torso. How perfect he was. Simply, "What about me?" He smirked. "Let whoever wants to look. I'm a person without prejudices or hang-ups." "Thanks." The girl smiled and put on the t-shirt. It smelled faintly of men's cologne. Through that scent, another barely perceptible smell came through. His scent. It made Chloe feel slightly dizzy. She immediately wanted to wear this t-shirt forever. "I'll walk you," the guy asked. "Of course," Chloe hastily agreed. How good that he brought it up himself. Now she wouldn't have to invent an excuse to prolong this pleasant encounter. And they walked through the shopping mall together. The stranger introduced himself as Alex. Chloe also gave her name. They walked and chatted about abstract topics, discussing the weather, car brands. They talked so easily and naturally, as if Alex and Chloe had known each other for many years. The girl didn't miss the way the guy looked at her. She had clearly captivated him. Alex didn't hide it. "I really liked you," the guy said when they finally reached the exit. "You're an amazingly beautiful and smart girl. Maybe you could give me your phone number? I'll call sometime. Maybe we can meet again." Of course, Chloe was delighted. This handsome guy was going to ask her out. What could be more wonderful? An adventure was in the making. After all, Alex. He was so real. She definitely wouldn't be bored with him. Only, she would have to constantly find ways to meet him without the watchful eye of the bodyguard. Well, it was okay. Chloe would figure something out. They would figure something out together. Chloe dictated the number to Alex. He immediately called it, and his number appeared on Chloe's phone. "Wow, what a phone you've got!" Alex was surprised, seeing Chloe's phone. She was a little embarrassed. She understood perfectly well that Alex was far from rich, unlike herself. The girl didn't want this fact to affect their relationship in any way. I'll wait for your call," the girl stammered. "Alex." He suddenly took a step towards her. Then, after a moment's thought, he carefully put his arms around her shoulders and kissed her. Right there in the shopping mall, right in the middle of a crowd of people hurrying about their business. For Chloe, it was her first real kiss. No, she had kissed a classmate once, but that kiss was more friendly. They just decided to try what it was like. Chloe didn't like it. Wet, slobbery, disgusting. But now, in this magical moment, she was truly happy. It seemed to her that she and Alex had become one. The guy held her tightly. She felt his strength and reliability. Her legs felt weak. Her head was spinning. Huge butterflies fluttered in her stomach. "Sorry, I couldn't help myself," Alex smiled. "It's just that you're so beautiful." I liked it," Chloe admitted honestly. Alex beamed. He was clearly pleased to hear that. That day, Chloe couldn't fall asleep. Alex sent her several messages, calling her unrealistically beautiful and the most wonderful girl on earth. In the evening before bed, the guy called Chloe to wish her good night. The girl also wrote to him, mostly just replying to his messages. Chloe would have liked to call Alex, hear his voice, reassure herself of the guy's interest, but she was very afraid of being pushy. They started meeting secretly. Of course, for this, Chloe had to sign up for yoga classes. The bodyguard would drive the girl to the fitness center building, but Chloe wouldn't go into the gym. She would run straight under the stairs. There was a back exit to the courtyard. Chloe would slip out the door and immediately fall into Alex's warm, strong embrace. How good they were together. Alex made Chloe happy just by being there. She couldn't stop looking into his bright blue eyes. And his smile. How the girl liked his white-toothed smile, which created dimples on the guy's cheeks. They walked around the city or sat somewhere on a bench in the park and talked. Sometimes they went to the cinema. And then, when it got colder, Alex started coming to Chloe in his car. It was a very old car that would periodically break down and stop right in the middle of the road. Alex would curse the rusty tin can, get out of the car, open the hood, and start repairing something there, rolling up his sweater sleeves. His strong, skilled, tanned hands knew what they were doing. The engine would always start working. It turned out that nothing was impossible for Alex, and this made Chloe respect the young man even more. Of course, soon Chloe and Alex knew everything about each other. The girl told him about her life. Comfortable, prosperous, but very boring. Alex just shook his head, listening to Chloe's stories about her travels, home, and parents. "Yes, you really are a princess here," he remarked, learning about Chloe's family for the first time. "I probably won't be able to provide you with such—" "Nonsense," Chloe interrupted him. The last thing she needed was for him to feel awkward around her. "You're the best person I've ever known. But surely guys from families like yours hang around you. They're spoiled, boring boys. I can't stand them," Chloe said passionately, and in confirmation of her words, she kissed Alex. "You're just incredible," he said, gently lifting Chloe's face by the chin and looking into her eyes. Alex also talked about himself. It turned out he lived in a small regional town and happened to be in Zelenogorsk on the day Chloe sprawled on the food court floor. He had come on business to sort out some documents for his business. He and a friend were opening a car repair shop, trying to earn something, because there was no decent work for young guys in their town, and none was expected. So he had to travel a long way to see Chloe for dates. The more the girl cherished the time spent with Alex. The guy, unlike Chloe, was born into a very poor family, and a single-parent one at that. Alex never knew his father. His mother raised her son and daughter alone, working 2 shifts at a factory to feed her children. And they grew up like weeds, left to themselves. Alex's childhood somewhat resembled that of Chloe's father. He also hung around with neighborhood boys day and night, and what adventures he didn't have. Sometimes fun, amusing, sometimes very dangerous indeed. Chloe listened to these stories, holding her breath. At such moments, she regretted more and more that a normal childhood had passed her by. "I finished 9 grades and ran away from school. It wasn't for me," Alex said about himself. "I went to an automotive technical college. Cars always attracted me, and I was good with them. We were constantly hanging around in neighbors' garages with the guys, helping men fix their cars. That's how we learned a lot. And then the army." In the army, Alex signed a contract. He needed money. His mother earned pennies, and his sister had a child by someone unknown and was dependent on their parents with the little one. Alex understood that the family needed help, and as a man, he decided to provide it. True, the money. That money came to the guy with great difficulty and at risk to his life. Alex had to spend several years in one of the so-called hot spots. He didn't tell Chloe the details, but she understood. Her beloved had faced something very terrible there, something the guy really wanted to forget. His eyes, when that period was mentioned, would become somehow frozen and cold, alien. Alex himself would immediately grow up and withdraw. Something happened to him there. Something very bad. Chloe hugged Alex, soothingly stroked him. He quickly recovered, a smile once again lighting up his familiar and pleasant face. "Anyway, as soon as the contract ended, I quit. I realized that a military career wasn't for me. The money I earned was enough to buy a small apartment on the outskirts of town. There was even some left for starting a business. True, I did have to take out a loan, but that's nothing. Our car repair shop is already starting to make a profit. Small for now, but still." Chloe realized that Max, Alex's business partner and longtime friend, worked in the police. The guys had served together, survived together in that same hotspot. And this turned out to be very useful. After all, in a small town, new businessmen have many competitors. Not everyone calmly accepted the news that new players had appeared in a long-divided market. Having their own people in the police was a real salvation for starting businessmen. Alex's life was full of dangers, struggles, adventures. It was simply bursting with energy, whereas Chloe's existence resembled a stagnant pond. True, now that Alex had appeared, life became much more interesting and pleasant for Chloe. These secret meetings of theirs, just like in a movie. But the girl really wanted to be with Alex always, not to be separated. He also wished for this, which he told Chloe almost every time they met. At night before bed, the girl imagined what their life together could be like, and the pictures that emerged were the most wonderful. But summer would soon end. She would be sent to Moscow State University. Then it meant her relationship with Alex would end? No, Chloe couldn't allow that. Even the thought of no longer having these wonderful dates made her feel sick. The gray, boring, meaningless life would start again. This was after Chloe had finally learned what it felt like to be happy. With Alex, the girl felt as if she were behind a stone wall, completely safe. He always knew where to go, what to say, and what to do. The guy made decisions easily and without the slightest hesitation. People often called him, asking for advice and help, and Alex never refused anyone. In his usual firm manner, he would suggest a way out, or promise to think about how to help the person on the other end. Chloe liked Alex's popularity. See how he was, needed by everyone. What a wonderful person her boyfriend was. He knew everything, could do anything. Confident, decisive, strong, experienced. Look how much this very young man had behind him. He endured, didn't break, was tempered. With someone like that, nothing was scary. Alex often suggested to Chloe that he meet her parents. Are we really going on dates secretly like little children? I want everything to be proper, as it should be. And I even like it, Chloe smiled, her slyness born only of happiness. Of course it would be wonderful to date Alex openly, but secret dates, that was a real adventure. And besides, the girl understood perfectly well that her parents wouldn't approve of her choice. Goodness knows, they might even lock her up at home or make the bodyguard escort their daughter right to the yoga studio, and then she wouldn't have the chance to meet Alex. I want to take you to my town. I want to fall asleep and wake up next to you. I just dream about it, Alex said, squeezing Chloe's hands tightly. I don't have enough of you, you understand? These sincere words and confessions made the girl dizzy. She had never felt so desired, beautiful, attractive. These feelings filled her with inner warmth, made the girl happier. Alex. He had somehow imperceptibly become the most important person to her. For the sake of being with him, Chloe was ready for anything. That's why the girl came up with an excursion, supposedly organized for her now former class, a trip to St. Petersburg for 2 days. Her father approved the idea, gave his daughter money, and told her which places were worth visiting in St. Petersburg. The bodyguard took Chloe to the train station, put her on the train. Chloe even bought a ticket to avoid suspicion. But once in the carriage, the girl simply ran to another door and got off on the opposite side. From the step, she jumped straight into the arms of Alex, who, of course, was aware of the girl's plans and was already waiting for her at the designated place. Chloe then found herself in Alex's town for the first time. A small, dusty, cramped town, somehow uncomfortable. But what did it matter? The main thing was that he was there, and they had 3 whole days to spend together, alone, just the 2 of them. What a wonderful period it was. Alex and Chloe weren't in a hurry. They had plenty of time. Alex's apartment turned out to be just as Chloe had imagined it. Small, but new, with good renovations. There was clearly a lack of furniture, and this gave the place a special charm. It turned out Alex was a great cook. Chloe even felt awkward about it. She didn't even make herself sandwiches at home, because they had a professional cook for that purpose. Alex quickly taught the girl how to cook simple dishes, scrambled eggs, soup, pasta with meatballs. The girl herself asked him to. It turned out it wasn't that difficult and was even pleasant, especially when cooking for the person you love. You're a talented student, Alex praised, diligently chewing her slightly overcooked patties. Very tasty. Alex introduced Chloe to his friend, the same Max, who worked in the police. As a side note, the girl learned that they had served together once. That is, Max had gone through the same hell as Alex. and he also had no desire to remember that period of his life. The friends had enough to talk about anyway. They endlessly discussed their car repair shop, which was just starting to take off, made plans, argued about something. Chloe realized that Alex and Max were very passionate about this venture. And it also turned out they lacked money for development. She herself offered Alex help. "I heard what you and Max were talking about. You need money. I have it. My father transfers money to my card every week. I don't spend that much, so I opened an account a long time ago. A decent amount has accumulated there. And I can give you this money." "Nonsense," Alex protested. "How would that look? How would I feel about myself after that?" "What's wrong with that?" Chloe didn't understand. "You're the man I love. You do so much for me. I want to help you too." In the end, Chloe persuaded Alex. He, clearly embarrassed by this turn of events, accepted her help. The 3 days spent with her beloved flew by very quickly. It was time to return. Chloe cried, hugging Alex before getting out of his car. The train from St. Petersburg was arriving on the nearest tracks soon. Chloe already saw her bodyguard. He had come to meet the boss's daughter and take her home. And at home she would again have to wait to meet Alex and call him secretly. How hard that would be after the weekend spent together. Then everything somehow changed. Alex started calling less often. The guy now replied to Chloe's messages monosyllabically. There were no more endless compliments and admiration for the girl. Chloe even got worried. Maybe she had disappointed Alex during their sweet weekend, and that's why he was suddenly distant. The girl replayed the events of the recent days in her memory, but found nothing that could cause doubt. Alex had looked very loving and happy. So what was wrong? Not wanting to be tormented by uncertainty, Chloe directly asked Alex this question. He replied that he had temporary problems, a lot of things that required all his attention. The guy assured her that he loved Chloe very much, that she was the most precious person to him. It was just a difficult period. "Maybe you need help? If it's about money, then—" "No!" Alex snapped, and seemed even offended that Chloe was offering him money again. But then he admitted that support wouldn't hurt him now. Chloe gladly transferred the guy an amount, even more than he had mentioned. He assured her he would definitely return everything. As for Chloe, it didn't matter to her. The girl just wanted everything to go back to how it was. Their meetings with Alex had completely stopped. Now he didn't have time to travel to her in the neighboring city. The business took up all his time and attention. Chloe understood that she just had to wait out the difficult times, but she missed Alex so desperately that she couldn't help herself. A month flew by unnoticed. It was time to head to Moscow. Chloe knew this moment would come, but she still felt as if fate itself had kicked her in the gut. The day before her departure, Alex came to see her. The girl asked her parents for permission, invented a story about needing to go to the nearest store. They didn't send the bodyguard with her. They knew how painfully their daughter reacted to his presence. And here, it was supposedly very close. Nothing would happen. Chloe slipped into Alex's car, pressed herself against him, and cried. "I don't want to part with you," she confessed. "Me neither." Alex stroked her back and hair. It was so calm next to him, so good. Would he really be so far away soon that even rare meetings would become impossible? "You will. You'll come to me there, won't you?" Chloe asked. "I'll try, baby. But you know I can't leave the business for long, especially now, when everything is just starting. It's the busiest time. I want to spend every second of my time with you so much. And I want that too. But you understand, don't you? I'm working now for us, so that one day I can come to your father and ask for your hand. But not as a poor guy, but as a successful businessman. Do you feel the difference?" "Yes," Chloe nodded. Alex was right. 100% right. Only for Chloe herself, it didn't matter who he was. A poor guy or a successful businessman. The main thing was to be next to this person, to see his eyes, hear his voice, feel his scent. Life in the capital didn't differ much from life in Zelenogorsk, except that her parents weren't nearby anymore. But the bodyguard still followed the girl literally everywhere, and at home, the housekeeper looked after her. She couldn't even invite friends over for a student party at her apartment. No one directly forbade it, but... True, Chloe didn't even think about parties and entertainment. Firstly, she had to study a lot. Moscow State University was completely different from school. Secondly, Chloe missed Alex very much. Couldn't think of anything except his blue eyes and strong hands. They barely communicated during this period, just exchanged news, of course, but without much detail. She missed him terribly. And thirdly, Chloe felt unwell. She had absolutely no strength to get up in the mornings due to unexplained nausea, and her appetite was completely gone. The girl had to force herself to eat even a little of the food the housekeeper prepared. Her formerly favorite dishes now caused aversion. One morning, after dealing with another bout of nausea, Chloe started thinking. A realization suddenly struck her. That same day, she went into a pharmacy and bought a pregnancy test. Chloe didn't wait until she got home. She used it right there in the university restroom. 2 lines. The girl looked at the test and smiled, and at the same time, she cried. All at once, simultaneously. She couldn't believe her happiness. Yes, there would be many difficulties. Chloe couldn't even imagine how she would explain it to her parents. But that wasn't the main thing. The only important thing was that a little one was already living under her heart, her and Alex's child. This was simply a miracle magic. From the same restroom stall, Chloe called her beloved. As soon as she said hello, she told the guy the news. Silence hung on the other end. Apparently, Alex was trying to grasp the meaning of what he had heard. The guy clearly hadn't expected this turn of events. A few seconds of silence seemed like an eternity to Chloe. She suddenly realized that the news might not have pleased Alex at all. A minute ago, the girl hadn't doubted the guy's reaction. It seemed to her that he would surely receive the news with the same joy as she did. But Alex was silent. Is that for sure? He finally said. Definitely. The test confirmed it. And I already knew without it. That's incredible, Alex breathed out. That's very happy news, although unexpected. We need to think urgently about what to do next. Chloe smiled. A weight was lifted from her heart. Alex hadn't disappointed her expectations, and he would definitely figure something out. Alex did figure something out. He came to see her in Moscow one day, completely unexpectedly, without even warning her. He somehow managed to find Chloe at the university. You're here! Chloe happily hung onto his neck. Yes, Alex nodded. Where else would I be at a moment like this? The guy declared that it was time to talk to Chloe's parents. He insisted that she call her father right in front of him and tell him everything, because now they needed to legalize their relationship. And anyway, so many changes were ahead. Chloe didn't want to do it, but Alex was firm, and she told her father everything. He listened without interrupting, and then said that he would come for his daughter right away to take her home. You don't understand. I don't want to go home. We'll live with Alex. We're a real family now. But her father didn't want to listen to anything. It turned out that he knew about his daughter's meetings with Alex, hadn't interfered, knowing Chloe's reaction to parental lectures, but had done some checking on the guy. He's a bad man, her father shouted right into the phone. He's very dangerous. Don't stay alone with him. I knew you were sneaking off to meet him, but forbidding it was useless. You were being watched to make sure nothing terrible happened. I hoped that a new life in Moscow would sweep you away, and you'd forget him. You knew about him? Yes, I knew. And I know more than even you know about him. Are you aware that he was brought in for... Alex snatched the phone from Chloe's hands and hung up. Rage flashed in his eyes. Chloe had never seen the man she loved like this before. But yes, he could be understood. After all, he had heard every word her father said, and he was saying hurtful, even insulting things. Well, it's time to make a choice, Alex said sternly. Your parents don't accept me and won't. That's obvious. No, Chloe protested. That's not true. They just don't know what you're like. And when they do... It is true, Alex countered. The choice here is this. Either them or me and our child. Chloe thought. She remembered her father, mother, her luxurious house, resembling a golden cage. It would be hard, of course, without parental support. But she was, after all, an adult and had the right to make her own decisions. And they, her father and mother, were still telling her what to do and treating her like a little girl. It was unbearable to put up with it anymore. Of course you. Chloe went up to Alex and put her arms around his neck. He softened a little at her words, even smiled slightly. That's great. We're leaving for my place today. What about my studies? Chloe clarified. What studies now? Alex put his arms around the girl's shoulders. You're expecting a child. You don't need stress. You can't get tired. Chloe almost cried then. He was taking care of her so tenderly. That same day, the girl went to the dean's office and withdrew her documents. That was it. Now she was free. Chloe moved in with Alex. When she was picking up her things from home, she had to face pressure from her parents. But the girl was ready for it. Her mother cried. Her father sometimes tried to persuade her by frightening her with a difficult future, sometimes threatened her. But Chloe didn't give in. Alex had warned her that her parents would try to talk Chloe out of it. People as wealthy as your mother and father consider guys like me paupers, gold diggers. How right Alex turned out to be. These were exactly the words her father used to call his daughter's future husband. Chloe found these insults unpleasant. She felt something akin to disgust towards her parents. How could they? Chloe, trying to speak calmly, argued with her mother and father that she was already an adult. She was 18, she was of legal age. Go. Of course, nothing is tying you down, he declared, exhausted by the end of the difficult conversation. But know this. When you understand what kind of person your Alex is, come back anytime, in any condition. We will always take you in. Chloe nodded and quickly slipped out of the house, full of confidence that she was leaving for a happy life with the man she loved, and very soon, with a child. Her parents, they would eventually understand that they were wrong. Alex was waiting for her at the gate in his old car. Seeing his beloved, the guy jumped out to meet her, hugged her, and took the heavy bag from her hands. "Hey, you!" shouted her father, who was watching the whole scene from the balcony. "If you hurt her, you'll be in big trouble." Chloe noticed Alex's eyes flash with rage. But the guy restrained himself, silently put Chloe in the car, then got in himself and started the engine. The girl saw that Alex wanted to leave this place as quickly as possible. She wanted the same thing. And so married life began. True, the lovers never officially registered their marriage. At first, Alex wanted to save money for a beautiful wedding. Then Chloe's belly became noticeable, and the guy decided to postpone the happy event until after the birth, so Chloe would be beautiful and slim at her own wedding. At first, the girl enjoyed the closeness of her beloved. She liked falling asleep and waking up next to him, making him breakfast, waiting for Alex to come home from work. The guy took care of her, bought fruit, constantly asked how she was feeling, and even accompanied her to the doctor for regular checkups. Chloe felt happy and loved. Alex was by her side, and soon their daughter would be born. How touchingly the future dad behaved during the ultrasound. He almost cried from the overflow of emotions when they were told they would have a daughter, and they even showed her on the screen. But time passed, and Alex's behavior began to change. At first subtly, and then more and more. Fault-finding. It all started with that. Alex first jokingly and then more and more seriously and irritably reproached young Chloe for being a poor housekeeper. And where and when could she have become an exemplary housekeeper if they always had helpers at home who took care of all the household chores? Chloe knew how to cook something. Incidentally, Alex had taught her. Periodically, she would wipe dust and put clothes in the washing machine. Alex, however, demanded more. He wasn't satisfied with dirty floors, things scattered everywhere, a refrigerator smeared with grease. He called Chloe messy, clumsy, a slob, sighed, and started cleaning everything himself. Chloe felt sorry for Alex at that moment and felt shame. Burning shame. He was a virtuoso at instilling guilt. Later, it turned out that Alex abused alcohol. He might drink at home after work, or come home already tipsy, explaining his state by another friend's or colleague's birthday. Sometimes, companies would gather at their place. Almost always, Max, the same friend and business partner, would also come at such moments. Chloe didn't like him. Somehow fake, selfish, unpleasant. And Max looked at her in such an unambiguous way, and even allowed himself inappropriate jokes about her. Alex didn't react. It was very hurtful. Alex looked at his friend like an idol. Apparently, when they served together, Max had almost saved his life, which is why they had such a relationship. Alex went to work every day, and always at different times, sometimes in the morning, sometimes closer to noon. He worked at a local factory and developed his business in parallel. There was a catastrophic lack of money. Fortunately, Chloe had taken many valuable things from home with her: jewelry, designer clothes. All of this was gradually being sold off because Alex needed money for his business. And sometimes there wasn't even enough for basic food. The car repair shop wasn't bringing in money yet. Alex explained this as the initial stage of development, saying it was always like that. But one day, Chloe began to suspect that it didn't exist, this car repair shop. Her suspicions were unintentionally confirmed by Max, who burst out laughing when Chloe mentioned that her husband was a real businessman. True, the man quickly composed himself, adopted a serious expression, but Chloe already understood everything. Back then, she still thought that Alex was lying just to look more respectable in her eyes. Chloe pushed away the memory of giving him money for a business that, it seemed, didn't exist and never had. Chloe didn't communicate with her parents. Alex didn't directly forbid it, but the girl understood that he would find it unpleasant, and she didn't want to anger and upset the man she loved unnecessarily. Yes, back then, still loved. Despite the fact that the guy already allowed himself to insult Chloe, the girl, for some reason, she sincerely considered them deserved. One day, Chloe clearly realized that she felt bad being around Alex. He had distanced himself, become a stranger. Now the guy did nothing but pick on Chloe and demand her complete obedience and household feats. At the same time, they were acutely short of money, not just for clothes or things for the baby girl who was about to be born, but even for basic groceries. Alex earned almost nothing. They lived on the money from selling Chloe's things. But these funds were also running out. Only a couple of rings, a chain, and a brooch were left in the jewelry box. The rest had long since been in the pawn shop. Chloe realized she had made a mistake. But how could she go back to her parents after that conversation? She would have to admit they were right and portray herself as a foolish, bewildered girl. And Chloe felt ashamed in front of her mother and father. So the girl stayed with Alex, hoped for the best, and tried to meet his expectations. And then Alex raised his hand to her for the first time. It happened on the day the girl didn't have enough money for the expensive pills that had been prescribed to her at the prenatal clinic. "Where am I supposed to find that kind of money? I'm not a millionaire. Ask your daddy. After all, this child is his granddaughter." "My daddy?" Chloe repeated. "Maybe I should just go live with my daddy then? What good is a husband like you anyway?" Before finishing the sentence, Chloe realized she shouldn't have said that. Alex's face flushed, his eyes widened, his gaze became furious, angry, very frightening. "So that's what you think of me?" he shouted, sweeping plates off the table. "You're no better than your parents. You consider those poorer than you second-class people." Then came undeserved insults, foul language, harsh words and expressions that Chloe had never heard before. She stood stunned by Alex's fury and didn't recognize him. Had she ever loved this terrible man? He struck her across the face, so hard that Chloe couldn't stay on her feet. It was good that there was a sofa nearby. The girl slid right onto it. Her cheek was burning. Tears sprang from her eyes. Alex froze for a moment. He probably didn't expect that from himself. Then he swore and went into the other room, slamming the door loudly. A few minutes later, he rushed out of the house without saying a word to Chloe. He came back in the morning, drunk and no longer aggressive at all. This happened more than once. Physical abuse became commonplace. It seemed that having allowed himself to treat the girl this way once, Alex couldn't stop. Chloe regularly received slaps and shoves for dishes not put away on time, a burnt pie, or asking too many questions. One day, the girl threatened that if Alex didn't stop, she would report him to the police. The guy laughed unpleasantly. "Go ahead," he smirked. "Did you forget where Max works? He's reached a high enough rank. He has people everywhere. What do you think will happen to your police report?" Alex was clearly not to be scared. Of course, one day Chloe's patience ran out, and she decided to leave after all. But Alex didn't let her. Seeing the girl's packed bags, he took her key and stood in front of the door. Alex pleaded, begged for forgiveness, promised to be the most loving and caring husband, called himself the worst names, assured her that everything would be fine now. And Chloe wavered, threw herself into his arms, pressed herself against him. At that moment, she was sure that the worst and most unpleasant things were behind them. But nothing changed in Alex's behavior. Reproaches, fault-finding, physical abuse, drinking, it all continued. Chloe packed her things again. This time, Alex didn't apologize. He just roughly pushed her away from the door, took the girl's phone and key. Chloe sobbed, begged him to let her go. "Why do you need me if you don't love me? Let me go." "You're carrying my child now," Alex explained. "When you give birth, leave the daughter with me, and you can go wherever you please. I can't let my daughter grow up without a father. I grew up without a father. It's hard. Very hard." Then Chloe first thought that Alex might not be entirely mentally healthy. A little later, the girl was completely convinced of this. Chloe once tried to escape at night while Alex was sleeping. During the day, in his absence, it was impossible. He now locked her in and took the key with him. She couldn't go out the window. It was the 5th floor after all. Chloe had just crept into the hallway, quietly turned the key in the lock. He woke up. He rushed out of the bedroom, pushed the girl away from the door. She couldn't keep her balance, fell right onto the floor, hitting her shoulder painfully. Alex completely lost control then. He shouted, threw things, and then handcuffed Chloe right to the radiator. Where he got the handcuffs, Chloe didn't know. Most likely, Max gave them to him. He was a police officer after all. Since then, Chloe's life turned into hell. For days, she sat chained to the radiator in the corner of the living room, away from the window, so she couldn't call for help. In the evening, Alex would come, feed her, but wouldn't answer her questions, wouldn't pay attention to Chloe's pleas and requests for forgiveness. He ignored her, punished her with silence, indifference, detachment, as if Chloe were nobody. Sometimes the girl thought, what if Alex just didn't come one day? She would have to starve to death next to that radiator. Fear washed over the girl in waves. Alex was not normal. Her father had been right after all. Although, most likely, even he didn't understand how sick Alex was. Otherwise, he would have kept his daughter no matter what. This was a terrible, dangerous man who was not accountable for his actions. And she had become his victim. Now the guy's apartment, where Chloe had once been so happy, had become a prison for her. One day, the girl, not particularly hoping for an answer, dared to ask Alex a disturbing question. What happens next? I'll be going into labor soon. Will I give birth in handcuffs too? Yes, he simply replied. What about it? I've watched a lot of videos about it. A disgusting process, of course, but there's nothing that difficult about it. Nature takes care of everything itself. I'll apparently give birth here? Chloe was horrified by the plans of the man she once loved. Yes, Alex nodded. Afterward, I'll take the child, and you'll be free. Just hold on. It won't be long now. Chloe turned cold. Alex wasn't joking or trying to scare her. He really intended to do exactly that. This man was not normal. How had she not noticed this before? Chloe understood perfectly well that such a home birth without medical help could end tragically for both her and the baby girl. Or, more likely, for both of them. She needed to act, and urgently. She couldn't sit idly by any longer. One day, a convenient opportunity presented itself to Chloe. Alex's friends came over, the same Max, an unpleasant and dangerous type, possibly as abnormal as his best friend, and another older man. They settled in the kitchen, talking, drinking, smoking right at the table. In short, they were having a good time. Of course, the unfamiliar guest asked why Alex was keeping his wife chained to the radiator. He lied about her diagnosis, saying that during pregnancy, a condition had worsened, making Chloe dangerous to herself and the baby. So, measures had to be taken. Alex spoke convincingly as always, and Max even backed him up. The guests even expressed sympathy for Alex. The evening went on as usual. Chloe waited for her moment. And finally, fate took pity on her. The unfamiliar guest himself came up to Chloe, squatted down in front of her with a pitiful face. Ah, so young, and such trouble. But one must... Alex and Max were already drunk. The stranger was also barely standing. Please, give me the key. It's in Alex's jacket pocket, Chloe asked. What for? The man became wary. She said, dazed, blinking her cloudy eyes. I need to go to the restroom. It's fine. Alex always lets me go. Yes? The man tried to figure something out. Why don't you ask him? You see, he always gets very upset when I ask him for help. It's an unnecessary reminder of my condition. I don't want to spoil his mood right now. Chloe said the first thing that came to her mind. She didn't particularly count on success. But it worked. The guest went into the hallway where the outerwear was hanging, found the key, and unlocked the handcuffs. Chloe. Where did she get the strength? She rushed into the hallway, grabbed the first coat she found on the hanger. It turned out to be Max's raincoat later, and dashed out through the unlocked front door to freedom. Chloe understood she needed to hurry. Surely the man had already told Alex what had happened. He, of course, was furious. It was terrifying to even imagine what he would do to her if he found her. The girl flew out into the black November night. It was already late, but the buses were still running. Chloe ran without looking where she was going. She found some change in the coat pocket. This came in very handy, because the icy wind and rain soon made themselves felt. The girl was chilled to the bone. She jumped into the first bus that arrived at the stop. Inside, it was warm and even cozy. The girl settled onto the back seat and thought, what to do next? No money, no phone. She couldn't go to the police. Alex had said more than once that Max, and therefore he himself, had everything covered here. The old bus wound through the night streets. There were few cars on the roads now. So Chloe immediately noticed it. Alex's painfully familiar car. It was slowly rolling along the right lane. That meant they were already looking for her. Had Alex gotten behind the wheel? He could barely stand. Chloe sank below the window level, almost lying on the seat, which caused confusion for the conductor, who was watching the only passenger. "Do you need help?" the woman in the orange vest with lots of pockets asked her. Maybe she should tell her everything, really? No, she couldn't. She might think Chloe was crazy or call the police. And at the police station. In short, she couldn't go to the police. Absolutely not. "It's okay." Chloe shook her head. She got off at the final stop simply because the bus went no further. Finding herself at a deserted stop on the outskirts of the city, the girl shivered. Now, what was she supposed to do? She couldn't go back to the city. They were already looking for her. She had to go somewhere. Maybe towards her hometown? Or hitchhike along the side of the highway. Someone would give her a ride. After all, the route to Zelenogorsk was popular and busy. It was a dangerous decision, Chloe knew. But the girl had no other choice anyway. "And I walked. I just walked straight ahead," Chloe said with bitterness in her voice. "Sometimes I thought they were driving on the road. Then I'd hide behind bushes or trees. But each time it was someone else. I asked for help, but everyone just drove past. And then you picked me up. That's it." Mark sat for a while, as if stunned by the girl's story. Could all this be true? Or maybe Chloe was really not normal, possibly even dangerous, though it didn't seem like it. Her speech was clear and coherent. Her gaze was clear. The man's decision was made in a flash. He simply couldn't do otherwise. "We're going to Zelenogorsk," he said. "To your parents." "Really? You'll take me?" "Well, of course I'll take you. What else can I do? A girl in this condition, she's pregnant, without money, without support. Apparently some people are looking for her. Leave her on the highway, abandon her to her fate? Mark couldn't do that. Of course, he would lose orders and spend a decent amount on gas, not to mention the time. He wouldn't get enough sleep before work again, maybe even oversleep, be late, and get chewed out. But all that was trivial compared to this girl's problems. On the way to Zelenogorsk, Chloe relaxed a little. She leaned back in her seat and dozed off. Mark looked at her with a smile. This was good. The girl needed to sleep. She had been through too much. Closer to her hometown, recognizing the familiar landscapes, Chloe suddenly stirred, became animated, and began asking Mark about his life. He answered honestly, frankly, in detail. The girl grieved, felt sorry for Leo and his parents. It was clear that she sincerely worried about Mark and his family. It was already early morning when Mark, pulling up to the large house surrounded by a high fence, turned off the engine. Could it be that I made it? Tears welled up in Chloe's eyes from the overflow of emotions. "Shall I walk you?" the man asked. "Thank you. You've done so much for me. I'll go myself. But you wait. My father will surely want to talk to you." The girl slipped out of the car and pressed the doorbell button at the gate. A minute later, the gates opened, and Chloe disappeared behind the fence. It was interesting what was happening in there now. Her parents probably couldn't believe their happiness. Their daughter had returned. Mark sincerely hoped that Alex and his friend Max would be dealt with. Well, if Chloe was to be believed, her father was an influential man. He wouldn't let this go. Mark's eyes were heavy with sleep. He was irresistibly drowsy. He probably wouldn't get any sleep today. He would have to spend the whole day on coffee and go straight to bed after work. There was no talk of driving a taxi tomorrow. At that moment, the phone rang. Mark glanced at the screen. His wife. Strange at this hour. Something had clearly happened. "Where are you?" Sarah's anxious voice came through the receiver. "Come home quickly. Leo is unwell. We're leaving in an ambulance now. The girls are left alone." "What's wrong with him?" "As always, a tantrum started and I couldn't stop it. Come home quickly." Mark started the engine. Even at high speed, it would take him at least an hour to get there. Chloe's story immediately flew out of his head. The man didn't even remember that the girl had asked him to wait to meet her father. Mark didn't have time for that now. When the man drove up to the house, it was already getting light. Annie and Laura were sitting huddled together on the sofa in the living room, so scared, so anxious. Very sweet, touching in their pink pajamas. Mark picked up his daughters, carried them to the bedroom, tucked them in, and sat by their bunk bed until the girls fell asleep. Leo. He was having another relapse. They urgently needed money for the boy's rehabilitation. Otherwise, what would happen? Otherwise, it was hard to guess, but certainly nothing good awaited them. Sarah returned an hour or hour and a half later. She found her husband asleep right on the floor, next to the girl's bed. She sighed, didn't wake him, just covered her husband with a blanket, and went to the bedroom. Leo was kept in the hospital for a week, and they were warned that without treatment and rehabilitation, serious deterioration awaited him. Life went on as usual. Leo was in the hospital. Mark worked day and night, trying to raise the necessary amount for treatment. Sarah knocked on the doors of foundations, but there were few chances there. First and foremost, money was collected for the treatment of children who needed urgent surgery. Those like Leo were not a priority. Mark barely remembered the story that had happened to him recently. He didn't have time for it. Too many worries and troubles had suddenly piled up. One morning, the boss called Mark into his office. The man went there, full of the gloomiest forebodings. He would be reprimanded for being late again. Mark did indeed often arrive at work later than he should have, not getting enough sleep after night shifts. But Mark realized he was wrong in his assumptions as soon as he saw Chloe in the boss's office. She looked completely different from that foul November night. Rested, refreshed, stylishly dressed. A real beauty. A man was sitting next to her. Sturdy, tall, with an attentive, sharp gaze. It was immediately clear that they were father and daughter. They looked too much alike. "Well, you two talk, you need to chat, and I have things to do." The boss smiled and left the office. The man got up from his seat, walked over to Mark, and shook his hand firmly. "Thank you. You saved my daughter." Sincere gratitude was visible in this man's eyes. "My daughter is the most precious thing I have." "But I just gave her a ride," Mark replied. "Your daughter is brave. She saved herself." "She wouldn't have saved herself if it weren't for you." Chloe joined the conversation. She also walked up to Mark and hugged him. "I was stopping cars on the highway then. They saw me but drove past. Nobody wanted extra trouble. But you saved me. You yourselves needed saving, didn't you? My daughter told me about your difficult situation." "And what happened next?" Mark asked. "What about Alex? Did they find him?" "Of course," Chloe's father nodded. "Right away, that same night. Or rather, in the morning. That scoundrel will get what he deserves. He's a cruel man. and his friend Max won't be able to help him in his situation either. Alex had a difficult childhood. He was abused by his stepfather. There was no one to protect the boy. Then he ended up in a hot spot. He saw everything there. That's why he went off the rails. At first, he planned to be with Chloe for the money, slowly siphoning funds from me through her. But you see how it turned out? My daughter broke off all ties with us. The plan failed, and Alex decided to act differently. Demand a ransom from us for her. At least, that's how he explained his behavior to the police. Alex intimidated Chloe, treated her terribly. He's a terrible man with a broken psyche. And that's the kind of monster Chloe fell into the hands of. The girl listened to her father sadly, with downcast eyes. It was clear that she hadn't fully recovered from what had happened to her. And would she ever? "We want to help your son," Chloe suddenly said directly to Mark. "Leo." "Yes!" Her father brightened up. "We learned about the boy's diagnosis and condition. I contacted doctors from St. Petersburg. They are already waiting for the child at the rehabilitation center, along with the family. Your hotel is paid for all of you. Leo will be treated, and you can walk around St. Petersburg for now, get acquainted with the northern capital. There's a lot there for your daughters, and the doctors at this center are the best specialists. They help children worse off than your Leo." I need to consult with my wife." Mark still couldn't believe what he was hearing. Could the problem really be solved? "She knows everything." Chloe's father smiled. "We've already spoken with her. She's packing the suitcases. Your wife wasn't just happy that Leo would be treated." Chloe joined the conversation again. Sarah smiled and said that her husband is the kindest, most noble man in the world. She is happy because of that. Mark felt his heart warm. The world around him immediately became somehow brighter, lighter.